The Pagan Empire is the first recognisable major polity in the lands of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. The imperial movement has left us a legacy of amazing Buddhist temples of unique architectural styles. If you wish to see for yourself, just initially use Google Earth to explore Old Pagan. This episode explores how this incredible temple building culture just suddenly appeared in medieval period Myanmar, and also explores some of the interesting characters who were the kings of this pious imperial movement. The Pagan Empire started out as a small city-state, but it would eventually rival the Khmer Empire in terms of size and influence. So let's explore this fascinating empire in a new area of the world for us here at the History of the World podcast. The History of the World podcast, written and presented by Chris Hasler.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Volume 4, The Medieval World. Episode 77, The Pagan Empire. Today's episode takes us to the modern area of the world, which is approximately the area of the modern country of Myanmar, which was officially known as Burma until 1989. It is the westernmost of the 6 countries of mainland Southeast Asia. It is bordered by the countries of Bangladesh and India to its west, and by the country of China to its north. Early evidence of occupation is scant, with a dependence on archaeology in the absence of any reliable written records before the most recent 1,000 years. We know that the lands of Myanmar experienced the expected trends of human evolution throughout its prehistory. Homo erectus preceded Homo sapiens, and Homo sapiens experienced the agricultural revolution before entering a Bronze Age and an Iron Age. This evidently happened due to archaeological discoveries. When we enter the most recent millenniums, the study of linguistics can also give us a clue about the migrations of peoples. It is thought that the earliest known languages spoken in mainland Southeast Asia were the Austroasiatic languages, but at some point it is believed that there was a migration of Sino-Tibetan speakers from the north. The Sino-Tibetans are the linguistic ancestors of modern Chinese speakers, among others, whereas the Austroasiatics are the linguistic ancestors of modern Vietnamese and Cambodian speakers, among others. Another Austroasiatic language group is the Monic language group, and these languages existed much further west than Vietnamese and Cambodian. In our episode about the history of the modern country of Thailand, we spoke of a kingdom called Dvaravati, which was established during the 6th century in the area of the modern country of Thailand by Monic language speakers. So we can suggest that by modern distribution of Monic languages, that Monic language speakers were present in the lands of the modern country of Myanmar. Modern Myanmar is made up from different ethnic groups, which are a mixture of ancient peoples settled in Myanmar and migrants from the north who likely migrated in from over 2,000 years ago. Arakanese people settled the coastal lands east of the Ganges Delta. Khmer peoples and Burmese people likely migrated from the north into Myanmar, but they were not closely related ethnic groups. Shan people, who originated from the Thai cultures of the Yunnan region of China, also migrated to Myanmar, maybe a little bit later, around the turn of the 2nd millennium. So we are already getting a feeling for the ethnic mix of Myanmar. The culture that interests us the most for this particular episode is that of the Burmese people, as it is these people who really give us the first known history of the country of Myanmar. Before the arrival of these different cultures, some city-states existed in Myanmar which are referred to as the Pew city-states. These city-states are thought to have been established by migrants from the Yunnan region of China, maybe as far back as the closing centuries of the 1st millennium BCE. They may have spoken a Tibeto-Burman language, which is a division of the wider Sino-Tibetan languages of the lands of Tibet and China. It is not completely clear when the Burmese people migrated into Myanmar, but linguists have suggested that they migrated from north of the Himalayan mountain range due to the similarity of their word for south and mountain. The Himalayas are to the northwest of modern Myanmar. So this implies that the migration of the Burmese people was from the north. Archaeology doesn't help much in this case, so we rely on the information within Burmese Chronicles. Burmese Chronicles describe an early king who established the city of Pagan on the banks of the Irrawaddy River, around 100 miles downriver from the modern city of Mandalay. The king's name is Pymbya, and he lived during the 9th century. Interestingly, radiocarbon dating suggests settlement at the city of Pagan from the 7th century. So if Pymbya did establish Pagan, it may have been at the location of an earlier Pew settlement. Also interesting is the fact that some Burmese chronicles state that Pymbya was the 33rd king of the Pagan dynasty, and that the Pagan dynasty existed from the 2nd century CE. So this would suggest that the Pagan dynasty was contemporaneous with the Pew city-states. The Pew city-states had been heavily influenced by the Indian cultures to their west, so it should come as little surprise to learn that Buddhist belief systems existed among them by the time of the birth of the Pagan kingdom, symbolised by King Pymbya's relocation of the centre of influence to the city of Pagan. It is possible that the path to the establishment of the Pagan kingdom was laid by a weakening of the Pew city-states following attacks from the tribes of the kingdom of Nanjao to Myanmar's northeast. Very little is known about King Pymbya and the early kingdom of Pagan. It was believed to be a very minor, isolated entity, but it would gradually extend its area of influence. The remnants of the Pew city-states are likely to have initially existed alongside the kingdom of Pagan, and they would have shared cultural similarities. there is no evidence that the establishment of the Pagan kingdom was a violent invasion of the Pew city-states' lands.
King Anoyata.
The general consensus is that the Zata Torbonyasa Win, which is the Burmese Chronicle of Royal Horoscopes, is the most accurate for dating the reigns of the Pagan rulers. If we follow this as a guideline, then we can say that King Pyembyar's reign likely ended around the year 876. Rule of the kingdom then passed down to his son, but it did not stay linear for long. Kings would tend to try to ensure that the throne stayed within their bloodline, but it was also susceptible to usurpation. A significant moment in the history of Myanmar came when King Anorata came to the throne in the year 1044. Anorwata's birth name was Minso, and he was the son of a former king of the Pagan called Kunso Changpyu, who himself was a grandson of King Pyembyar. So despite all of the usurpations, the line of King Pyembyar stayed close to the throne, and this would include Pyembyar's great-grandson Anorwata. Kunso Changpyu had been persuaded to abdicate by the two sons of another former king, and so Kunso retired to a monastery. After the elder of the two sons died, the younger son took the throne, and Anorwata Minso challenged the new king and killed him in battle. Anorwata initially offered the crown back to his father, but when his father refused, Anorwata took the crown for himself. The Pew city-states had been pressurised by other entities such as the Nandiao kingdom and the Mon Taton kingdom of Lower Myanmar, from downriver nearer to the coastal lands and the Irrawaddy Delta. When Anorwata came to the Pagan throne, he would have imperial ambitions of his own. It wouldn't be long before the Pew city-states were brought under the influence of Pagan. Before the reign of Anorwata, the largest influence on the Pew city-states came from the Nanjiao kingdom, but the Nanjiao kingdom had declined, leaving an opportunity for the new power to rise up, and Anorwata was ready to take those steps. What he was about to achieve would leave a lasting legacy. The Mon Taton kingdom was a kingdom centred on the city of Taton, and it was ethnically Monic. Taton had been a successful kingdom due to its links to the Bay of Bengal and the lands of India and Sri Lanka. If we go right back to the days of the Mauryan Empire Ashoka the Great, who was alive over a millennium before in the lands of India, then we will recall how Ashoka's children took Buddhism to Sri Lanka. The branch of Buddhism that emerged in Sri Lanka is called Theravada Buddhism, and due to its trade links between Sri Lanka and Myanmar, Theravada Buddhism spread to the Tatong kingdom. Buddhism did exist in the Pagan kingdom, but it was a form of Buddhism called Ari Buddhism, which tolerated the more questionable acts of alcohol consumption and imposed sexual relationships. Unlike today, Theravada Buddhism was very isolated during the 11th century and threatened by Hindu ideas, until a monk from the Tatong kingdom called Shin Arahan travelled northwards to the Pagan kingdom to spread the word of his brand of Buddhism. We could hazard a guess that King Anorwata was concerned by the indiscipline of his Ari Buddhist subjects and was attracted by the comparative purity of Shin Arahan's brand of Buddhism. There is a suggestion that Anorwata also went on a pilgrimage to Sri Lanka. So Shin Arahan was welcomed to the Pagan kingdom with open arms, and King Anawata converted the Pagan kingdom to Theravada Buddhism. King Anawata demanded access to the scriptures that would enable him to teach his subjects, but the scriptures were left back in the Tatong kingdom. King Manuha of Taton was evasive when it came to allowing Anawata access to the scriptures, so Anawata decided to undertake a military campaign against Taton. Anawata besieged Taton, and ultimately Taton fell after centuries of existence. Manuha would be taken as a prisoner of war alongside a huge number of skilled artisans, craftsmen, monks and soldiers, as well as treasures. Basically, everything of value was taken from Taton to Pagan. This was a highly significant time in Myanmarese history, as there would now be an imperial entity ruling over both Upper and Lower Myanmar, and other political entities would have to take notice and recognise it. It has also been supposed that Theravada Buddhism could have died out or have been supplanted by other forms of Buddhism had Anawata not taken this action. The conquest of Taton in the year 1057 sparked a very sudden scientific and cultural revolution of Myanmar. With his newfound power, Anawata could now be able to have a wider influence on surrounding lands, and this included the Shan states in the east and the Arakan coastal region in the southwest. The Shan people were very adept agriculturally, so Anawata would do all he could to obtain knowledge and power from the Shan, which would increase output. When Anawata subjugated Arakan, he would allow the ruling dynasty to remain in place. Anawata was also careful to undertake political marriages. His wives were of Mon, Arakan and Shan origin. Anawata was seemingly a very clear-minded and intelligent ruler. Exactly how large the new Pagan Empire became and when it did so is a matter for intense debate among scholars. Some scholars claim that the Pagan Empire was dishing out defeats to the greatest empire of Southeast Asia at the time, the Khmer Empire. Others claim that Pagan had little more than direct influence over the Irrawaddy Valley of Pagan and Taton, Upper and Lower Myanmar, and that the surrounding lands were just tributary states at best. If the chronicles are to be believed, then it does appear that Pagan was extending its imperial influence well, but as mentioned, we take the content of the chronicles with a pinch of salt due to the potential conflicts in evidence. The Chao Phraya River flows through the Thai capital of Bangkok, but during this period, Mon people of the Lavo kingdom occupied this area, and it is likely that the influence of the Pagan Empire stretched far enough to be within touching distance of the Lavo. But if chronicles are anything to go by, then the Pagan Empire achieved much more. The powerhouse of Southeast Asia at the time was the Khmer Empire, based in a similar area to the modern country of Cambodia, and the Khmer Empire had subjugated the Lavo kingdom. Thai chronicles suggest that Anawata was able to conquer the entire Chao Phraya River valley, and when he did so, he demanded tribute from the Khmer rulers. Further to this, there are also claims that Anawata sacked the Khmer capital city of Angkor, although this is disputed. What a claim that would be to think that the ruler of a small city-state on the Irrawaddy River would end up sacking the capital city of the most powerful empire of Southeast Asia. The Mahamuni Buddha temple in the city of Mandalay houses a 6.5-ton bronze image of the Buddha that is decorated with gold and jewels and is held in high sacred regard by the population. The image was transported to Mandalay from the Rakhine state of Myanmar, which is also the same area as Arakan. So when Anawata successfully besieged the Arakanese capital city of Pinsar and subjugated Arakan, he wanted to transport the bronze image to Pagan, but was unable to due to its sheer size and weight. It would not be until the year 1784 that the image was eventually moved to its present location. In respect of Buddhist temples, the reign of Anawata was highly significant in terms of it being a catalyst for a great period of temple building within the Pagan kingdom. The temples of Pagan are absolutely magnificent. Many still exist to this day, although they were an expensive project and did little to boost the economy of the kingdom. We know that Anawata started the wonderful construction that is the Shui Sikon Pagoda, slightly upriver from the centre of Pagan itself, although it was eventually finished by his son and the future king Chansita. The Glass Palace Chronicles of the Kings of Burma tells us the story of how Anawata attempted to obtain a tooth of the Buddha from Sri Lanka. Anawata sent ambassadors to Sri Lanka to obtain the tooth, but they were unsuccessful, instead being given a duplicate tooth. This duplicate tooth had the ability to reproduce itself, and by the time it had reached the Shui Sikon Pagoda, one tooth had become 4. However, it is also claimed that this pagoda actually does contain a genuine bone and tooth of the Buddha, making it a highly sacred location. Despite his support of Theravada Buddhism, it is also claimed that Anawata was respectful of the pre-existing native religious beliefs of the people of the Irrawaddy Valley. Anawata's death is mysterious. It is suggested that he was killed by enemies outside Pagan, but chronicles say that he was killed by spirits and that demons took his body. His body was never found in any case. We mentioned about how Anawata's son Chansita became the king, but he did not succeed his father directly, as another son, So Lu, was favoured. Chansita was in exile at his father's death due to an incident involving one of Anawata's wives. Chansita, as one of his father's trusted military generals, was sent to Bago in the south to help defend it from aggressors in the east. As a token of gratitude, the ruler of Bago offered his young daughter Manisanda in U as a wife for King Anawata. Chansita escorted the princess on her journey to Pagan, but while travelling, they reportedly fell hopelessly in love with each other. When Anawata learned of this, he was furious, and Chansita is said to have fled Pagan as a consequence.
After Anawata.
Anawata was succeeded by his young son So Lu as the king of Pagan. As we have seen so often in history, after the reign of such an authoritative and successful ruler, rebellions broke out against the new ruler. As such, So Lu called for his exiled and militarily adept older brother Chansita, and so Chansita returned. Rebels were still able to capture the young king So Lu, however, and despite Chansita's attempts to rescue him, the rescue was unsuccessful due to King Sorlu's protests, and as such Chinsitar had to abandon him. The rebels recaptured King Sorlu and executed him. It appears that Sorlu was sceptical about Chansitar's motives to rescue him, but his distrust resulted badly for him. Chansitar would then be able to claim the crown and continue the work of his father, Anawata, including the completion of the Shui Sigon Pagoda. Chansitar was an effective ruler, though not without enemies. Pagan was at its peak under his rule, and the incredible Ananda temple was constructed at his instruction. He also promoted Mon culture within Pagan, giving Pagan its own unique blend of cultures. The strength of the kingdom continued under Alaung Situ, Chansitar's nephew. Alaung Situ concentrated efforts into further improving irrigation systems and encouraging trade, while standardising weights and measures, a common practice rolled out historically by strong monarchs globally who enjoyed strong and fruitful trade relations both domestically and internationally. The same devout loyalty to Buddhism is demonstrated by the continuation of temple building. There was also an effort to be inclusive of different ethnic groups of the empire. The sacred language of Theravada Buddhism was Pali, which was an Indo-Iranian language and therefore is also an Indo-European language. This language was in use in the Pagan Empire as a consequence, but one discovered inscription from this period also demonstrates translations of Pali texts into Burmese, Pew and Mon, which would have been inclusive for a large percentage of the population under Pagan rule at this time. Anawata built the tallest pagoda in Pagan when he constructed the Shui Sandor Pagoda, but the tallest temple complex in terms of its spire was built by Alaung Situ when he constructed the That Binyu temple. Some of the architecture of these temples and pagodas are so impressive in such humble surroundings, and it is definitely worth investigating these buildings online if you enjoy such things, as so many impressive buildings are clustered in the area of Old Pagan. It is really a case of there being a breathtaking sight at the corner of every street. During the 12th century, the Pagan Empire was peaceful under strong rulers, but under weaker rulers there would be competition for power and rebellions among the population.
Decline.
One of the greatest attributes of the monarchs of the Pagan Empire was their piety. Their construction of the religious monuments is quite amazing, but it is also this incredible devotion to the Buddhist faith that would cause hardship for the empire. With the appropriation of many lands to religious establishments, this meant that the land could not be taxed and limited the amount of wealth that the state could obtain from its subjects. The diminishing treasury caused difficulties in retaining the loyalty of military servicemen, quite obviously therefore weakening the army. At this point, the construction of temples also experienced a downturn. The piety of some monarchs could also impact on the hands-on governance of the empire, as more pious monarchs could show little or no interest in politics. In the year 1235, King Kaswa became the new ruler of the Pagan Empire, and he recognised the problem with the economy, so he started to reclaim lands back from the Buddhist monasteries in order to make them taxable again. It wasn't the fact that Kaswa was impious in any way, but much more the fact that he felt that the forest-dwelling monks in the kingdom were preventing tax money from becoming available for temple construction. This could be seen as a reasonable approach, but certainly not to the public. Public opinion generally was that it was not acceptable to reclaim these lands from the monks, and King Kasua was forced to revise his plan as a consequence. Kasua became disenchanted with governing his empire after this failure. It would be a man called Usana who would be entrusted with governing the empire instead. Usana may have been Kasua's son, but there are conflicting accounts regarding exactly who Usana's father was. Accounts of Usana's authority were not the best. Despite being entrusted to govern Pagan, he seemed more interested in frivolous activities than being a good ruler. Usana enjoyed hunting, drinking, and the company of peasant females. After the death of Kasua in 1251, Usana would actually become the king, but his reign did not last very long. While hunting elephants, Usana, possibly drunk, fell from his horse and was subsequently trampled to death by the elephant. Usana was succeeded by his son Nayati-Hapati. The ministers of the state were far from enthusiastic about the accession of this teenager to the throne, and in turn Nayati-Hapati was quite distrustful of the ministers. His name at the royal court was Min Hui Chi, which roughly translates as Prince Dog Poo. It was not a good footing for the future. The chief minister of Pagan was a military general called Yasating Jan, a wise man who had been around the royal court for many years and was also the commander-in-chief of the Royal Burmese Armed Forces. If there was one man in the upper ranks that Nayati-Hapati could rely upon for support in these early years, it would be Yasating Jan. Unfortunately, Yasating Jan would fall ill while returning from campaign and die, and perhaps this disappearance of a source of wisdom had consequences for the future. A couple of years before the accession, a significant event happened in the northeast of the Pagan Empire. The Dali kingdom, which had long been a tributary state of Song China, had been subjugated by the Mongols, who had spent the 13th century expanding their influence from the lands north of China across Asia from east to west in an unprecedented acquisition of lands. Now the Mongols were extending their influence south and in the direction of the Pagan Empire, so King Nayati-Hapati would need to be considerate of this potential existential threat. It would be a little while until the Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan would send emissaries to the Pagan royal court to demand tribute from King Nayati-Hapati. Kublai Khan would have ambitions against Song China and desired to encircle the Chinese state. Having the obedience of the Pagan Empire would aid Kublai Khan's plan and might have had benefits for the Pagan Empire. Regardless of this, King Nayati-Hapati refused to pay tribute, possibly because there was very little excess wealth in Pagan by this time. Kublai Khan continued his aggressions against Song China nonetheless, but periodically sent embassies to Pagan, only to receive the same result, a refusal to cooperate. King Nayati-Hapati was somewhat powerless to prevent the Mongol army occupying the northern borderlands in order to be able to approach Song China from different fronts. Escalation of the issue between Pagan and the Mongols occurred when a particular group of Mongol emissaries travelled to Pagan and never returned. King Nayati-Hapati had the Mongol emissaries killed. And the reason is because they failed to remove their shoes when necessary, as can often be the case when entering sacred Buddhist areas. It should come as no surprise that this did not go down well, but one has to wonder why King Nayatihapati would carry out such a provocative act. Mongol emissaries had also been killed in other states such as Japan and the Khmer Empire, so were emissaries actually being killed, or did the Mongols claim they were being killed in order to create a pretext by which they could legitimately declare war? There is no evidence to suggest that it was fabrication, but it's interesting to consider the possibility. However, King Nayatihapati was not going to wait for a Mongol invasion. Instead, he did something which in hindsight could seem incredibly brave or incredibly reckless. Nayatihapati marched into Mongol-occupied Yunnan with thousands of soldiers and over 100 elephants, and there he would meet a Mongol army which, upon seeing the elephants, chose to dismount and shower them with arrows, which created an elephant stampede, which took the strength out of the Pagan army, and the Pagans had to retreat in defeat and withdrew back to Pagan heartlands. Kublai Khan ordered that his troops prepare an invasion of Pagan, and so when the Mongols started closing in on the city of Pagan, King Nayatihapati fled south. The Mongols chose not to destroy the temples of Pagan lands, and this is something celebrated in the writings of Marco Polo, the Venetian travelling merchant who was a guest at the royal court of Kublai Khan for a number of years. The flight southwards of King Nayatihapati effectively symbolised the conquest of Pagan by the Mongols. But the Mongols didn't actually conquer Pagan. They probably looted it before installing their own puppet rulers. A peace treaty requiring that Pagan submit a regular tribute to the Mongols was established, and King Nayatihapati had no choice but to agree with it. The reality was that there would be no sustainable way that Pagan would be able to keep up with the tribute payments. All respect for King Nayatihapati had been lost, and it would come down to his very own son, Thihatu of Pron, to capture his father and force his suicide by making him drink poison. The Pagan kingdom had no way of moving forward as a united entity, and so its fragmentation took place. This marked the end of a united Burmese state which contained both Upper and Lower Myanmar, and the two regions would not be part of a meaningful united state until the rise of the Taungoo dynasty in the 16th century. Pagan was the first identifiably Burmese state and the earliest true imperial movement that could be called a predecessor of the modern country of Myanmar. Its gift to the modern world has to be the incredible Buddhist temples and pagodas that still stand to this day.
Zootopia 2 has come home to Disney+.
Let's go!
Get ready for a new case.
We're gonna crack this case and prove we're the greatest partners of all time!
New friends.
You are... Gary the Snake. And your last name? The Snake.
Dream team.
And new habitats.
Zootopia has a secret reptile population.
You can watch the record-breaking phenomenon at home.
You're clearly working it.
Zootopia 2, now available on Disney+, rated PG.
A big warm thank you to all of you for listening to this week's History of the World podcast episode on the Pagan Kingdom of Myanmar. This starts the series of episodes on Southeast Asia. So next week we'll be looking at Srivijaya, the kingdom that emerged on the Indonesian islands. That will be interesting for us to explore. Anyway, if you enjoy the podcast and you would like to support the podcast, then please visit our website, historyoftheworldpodcast.com. Click on the Patreon link and sign up to make a monthly contribution. When you do this, you will become a lifelong member of the History of the World podcast Illuminati, and you will qualify for gifts and rewards. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, please drop me a line at historyoftheworldpodcast@mail.com. And don't forget, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Tumblr, Threads, and Mastodon. And if you can't get enough of the podcast, then do look out for the special debrief episode where I'll be talking some more about the episode that you just listened to, and there'll be a few extra little bits and pieces.
Listener messages and reviews.
Ian Katz wrote in and said, "Dear Chris, thanks so much for your excellent podcasts. I've listened so far to Volume 3, Episode 39. I would particularly like to thank you for your excellent explanation of the reasons for the assassination of Julius Caesar. Having studied Shakespeare's play at school and read a few histories of the period, I realised I was still ignorant of why he was killed. I always regarded Caesar as the character portrayed by John Gielgud in the film adaptation, and not as the sort of socialist reformer whom you described, who invoked the ire of the Conservative senators. Have I got this right? Once again, many thanks." Well, there were a lot of people out for Julius Caesar. It was really, for me, a power struggle in Rome. It was it had this trend throughout the Roman Republic of people just wanting to seize power for themselves. Everyone sort of went into it for themselves, and they lost respect for the general ethos of Roman rule. Like the Senate was really less effective than it had ever been. Going into these final decades of the Roman Republic, which is why there was such a radical reform on the horizon. But yes, Julius Caesar did probably upset a few people, but then you couldn't be in Roman politics without having a position that was going to upset somebody. So everyone was pretty much in danger. We only have to look at what happened to Pompey and what happened to Cicero. All of these people, Mark Antony, all of these great Roman statesmen just spent a lot of their time on the run because it was just a huge republic of distrust. So it was no real surprise when you look at it from a bird's eye view that Julius Caesar was assassinated. Such was the nature of the Roman Republic. But thanks, Ian Katz. Very interesting email. Thank you so much. Couple of reviews we've had. JV1121 from the United States of America has put, came for the Australopithecines and prehistory, staying for the fantastic storytelling and the accent. I'm on Volume 2, Episode 17 and can't step away. Thanks for this excellent body of work. I'm a huge fan of Dan Carlin's hardcore history. He digs into ancient and modern history really deeply. His latest is a 4-hour part 1 in the life and times of Alexander the Great. He's not a prehistory guy though, and that's what led me to you. I'm learning so much and enjoying every minute. Julie in Pennsylvania, USA. Thank you, Julie. Tagaron has written in, or written a review, I should say, and put global world name option. Wonderful podcast which takes us step by step through the journey of humanity on this earth. I've enjoyed it for years, been a member of his Patreon, and was sure that I had already left a review before. I guess I forgot that. Happy to rectify it and help support wherever possible. Also on a recent podcast, you were trying to figure out what you were going to name the next section. I like the term global world instead of trying to do the gunpowder world or something else. After leaving the medieval age, the world becomes more interconnected and global in nature. It certainly does. It certainly does. There's no denying that. I can't remember if I read out the review from Lair Bear 7 from the United States of America, who put Great History Podcast. This is a great podcast with amazing details about our history. If I didn't read it out before, I've certainly read it out now. And if I did read it out before, then you're lucky enough to have had your review read out twice. So there you go. Anyway, thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to catch up with the History of the World podcast Illuminati debrief. That will be coming up alongside this episode. Go and listen to that one as well. But until next time, I think I owe you a couple of History of the World podcast magazines, don't I? So keep an eye out for that one. I might try and knock a couple out in the next couple of days, if possible. But don't hold me to that. But until next time, until we meet again, be good.
The History of the World podcast, written and presented by Chris Hasler. Please consider making a financial contribution by going to the historyoftheworldpodcast.com website and clicking on the Patreon link. Email the show at historyoftheworldpodcast@mail.com. And don't forget to join our social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Tumblr. See you next time.